welcome back to Impact Online. I'm so excited that you guys are here. I hope you enjoyed an incredible Easter with just family and amazing weather. But guys, I'm excited because this week we are kicking off our 3-week series called Waitlisted. And in this series, we are going to be diving into the topic of waiting. Waiting for God, or how God calls us to wait. And sometimes that's not easy because you see, God is always at work in our lives. God always has a plan, but I think it's a lot easier for us to trust in our own plan instead of His. What I want to tell you guys about is something called the marshmallow study. It's something that Stanford did, and it was really interesting. You see, they brought a bunch of little kids and brought them into a room, one at a time, and they gave them one marshmallow. And they told them that if they waited to eat that marshmallow, the adult would give them instead 2 marshmallows once the adult came back. And what they found is majority of the kids ate the marshmallow. They just ate it. And at first they thought that meant it was a lack of control. It was a lack of impulse control, but that's not true. You see, as they studied this further, they began to understand that the reason these kids weren't waiting is because they didn't trust that a second marshmallow was coming. They didn't trust the stranger that brought them to that room that told them, if you wait for me, I will bring you 2 marshmallows. Instead, they rather jump and eat the marshmallow that they know they have instead of waiting for the promise of the second one. And I think we can apply that to ourselves as well, guys. You see, I think it's so much easier to look at our plans, the plans that we have for ourselves, the things that are tangible and right in front of us, even though we know the promises of God, even when we know God might be calling us to be patient or to wait for things, it's so much easier to take a hold of what we see in front of us instead of trusting in how God might be working. In my life, I don't know if you guys know this about me, I'm a planner. I am a significant planner, and I have always had a plan, and I think God likes to kind of teach me a lesson with this. Since I was 18 years old, I had planned that I decided that I would graduate by the time I was 22. I wanted to be a youth pastor by the time I was 24, and I wanted to get married by the time I was 26, and I wanted to get my master's degree by the time I was 29, and eventually start a family by the time I was 31. Well, I did graduate when I was 22, but I didn't become a pastor till I was 25. And I didn't get married till I was 27. And I probably won't, at this rate, get my master's degree till I'm at least 31. And then who knows when kids are coming at this point. You see, guys, I wasn't that far off. I'm a little bit proud of that, but at the same time, that 1 year was always so hard for me. I remember the year 24 coming and just feeling disappointed in myself and feeling frustrated and asking myself, God, you've called me to do this. Why am I not there? It was frustrating because I had an idea of how God was supposed to play out His promises for me, because I knew God called me to be a pastor. And so when I didn't see it happen the way I wanted it to happen, instead I was frustrated, instead I was angry. Instead, I was confused, I doubted, I questioned. And I wonder if you guys do the same, because I think there's so many different ways that we know God is calling us to live, or we feel promptings that God is pushing us toward, but we don't understand how to place our trust in God as He works in those things. And so as we talk about the idea of waiting in this series, we're going to be looking at different characters in the Bible and their stories. And this week I want to look at the story of Abram and Sarah, or Sarai, before her name was changed. You see, God called them to wait. God called them to trust. But it wasn't easy. And so I want to point to the beginning of their story. Their names were Abram and Sarai, and it's in Genesis 12, 1 through 2. I wanted to read how God interacts with Abram, and here's what it says. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This is an amazing promise that God is given. What you need to understand is God is calling Abraham and his wife Sarai to leave their country, to leave their family, to leave their home, go somewhere unknown, go on a dangerous path to pursue God's glory, to pursue God's plan. And in doing so, God tells them that they are going to be a great nation. But what you need to understand is in order to be a great nation, you have to have kids. See, God is telling them that far down the road, Abram's descendants will be a great nation. But here's the thing, Abram and Sarai don't have any kids. And they're old. And the funny thing is, Abram and Sarah, they pack up their belongings, they pack up their things, and they head out the way that God has called them, and they pursue it, and they are so willing to trust that he will see them through this. But for some reason, they couldn't trust that he would give them a child. They couldn't trust that he would show up in that way, because one, things had already not gone to plan with having kids. Abram and Sarai were way past the time of having children. It was impossible, improbable. And this God was calling them to do crazy things, and they were willing to do it. They were willing to follow him, but for some reason, this one thing, they couldn't give it over. They couldn't trust. I mean, they hoped, but they couldn't trust. And I want to see how Abram responds in Genesis 15, verses 1 through 6, because I think it's important for us to read this. And here's what it says. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, then he said to him, So shall your offspring be. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. You see, Abram doubted, Abram questioned, Abram did these things, he followed God's prompting, but yet he was still like, God, where is my child? And God is reassuring him, God is telling him, you will have many, many descendants. And Abram believes him in that moment. But you guys, it's in the waiting that's hard, right? I have felt so on fire for God in the moments, especially when I was 18, when I was called to be a pastor, but it was in the moments of waiting to find that role, to find the right job, to get that education, when the days were hard, that I could doubt. And I don't know about you, about struggling with doubt in waiting for God to show up. That doesn't always mean you're waiting for God to show up in a calling. Maybe you're waiting for him to show up and bringing resolution to something that's difficult. Maybe you're waiting for him to show up for healing. Maybe you're waiting for him to show up with healing. Maybe you're waiting for him to show up with clarity, something. But the doubt creeps in. You start to wonder, God, where are you? God, I believe you, but I don't trust you'll show up. I don't trust you'll give me what you've promised. And the thing is, Abram and Sarai, sorry guys, I keep mixing up their names, began to doubt. They began to doubt, and in that doubt, they made poor decisions. They decided to do something that I think we all do. They decided to take matters into their own hands. See, Abram and Sarai decided that there was no way that God was going to show up and give them a child of their own, and so they decided to make their own plan. Sarai couldn't have children, and so they had Abram sleep with their servant, Hagar. Here's the thing, guys. That's all kinds of inappropriate. That's all kinds of wrong. Sarai and Abram had become so consumed with getting what God had promised, but getting it on their own terms, that they chose to do actions that weren't good, actions that didn't glorify God, actions that didn't honor themselves, and very clearly didn't honor others. And it didn't work. They took this plan into their own hands, and they thought, this is how Abram will have children. This is how we will create descendants of his own flesh and blood. God is just waiting for us to do what he said he would do himself. And it didn't turn out the way they thought it would. You see, as soon as Hagar becomes pregnant, Sarai becomes jealous and hurtful. And she wants Abram to have nothing to do with the kid or with Hagar. And it doesn't create this cohesive, happy family. He doesn't create this situation where Abram can actually build a healthy nation, build many descendants. Their own plan implodes. It doesn't work the way they wanted it to. But you see, for some reason, they thought, if God's not going to show up in my timing, I'm going to do what I have to do to get God's promise. And how often do we do that? How often do we get to a point where there's something we so desperately want, whether it's a degree, whether it's an accolade, whether it's a relationship, whether it's acknowledgement, whatever it might be? How often do we get to a point in the waiting where we start to doubt, and we start to doubt God's goodness? We start to doubt that he'll show up. We'll start to doubt that he'll be faithful. And we decide, I'm going to do it myself. And sometimes it's not even waiting on God. Sometimes it's just not even being able to trust that good things can happen in waiting and doing what is right. And so instead we turn to cheating. Instead we turn to manipulating. Instead we turn to whatever means we can figure out necessary to make something happen. But guys, when we go to that, when we turn to doing whatever we think is necessary to get what we think we want, we lose sight of what is important. We lose sight of our integrity, we lose sight of our decency, we lose sight of goodness, and ultimately we lose sight of the path that God has called us on. Because God never calls us to manipulate. God never calls us to do whatever is necessary, even if it means diminishing others or diminishing ourselves to get to it. God doesn't call us to that. So how instead do we let go of what our expectations of God's plan is, and instead trust him? But here's the amazing thing. God was still faithful. Abram and Sarai messed up, but God was still faithful. He showed up to them and he said, and here's the thing, guys. It was 25 years after God had called them to leave their home. 25 years after he had promised them a child that God said, now is the time. And they laughed and asked, how is this possible? Because they were in their 90s. They were old. And God said, I am good and I will do this. I will give you a nation that is born from you guys. And he changed their names from Abram and Sarai to Abraham and Sarah. And what you need to understand is that they were the father and mother of the nation of Israel, God's people. And maybe Abraham and Sarah didn't fully understand this, and they thought the most important thing of this entire journey, the most important thing of all their expectations was them having this child. But no, it's what God had planned. And God was faithful in his plan, and he knew that out of their child, who was Isaac, would be the nation of Israel, something far greater than they could have imagined. God was faithful regardless of their mistakes. God was faithful regardless of their impatience. But here's the thing. Because of their impatience, because of their doubt, because of their desire to take control and their lack of trust in God, they made things so much harder. And so I want to ask you, where in your life should you be giving trust to God? Where in your life should you be trusting him to lead you? And I'm not saying trust in the way where you say, God, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing until you give me what I feel you have promised. No, it's faithfully following God. Faithfully following God as the blessings come, regardless of when they come, regardless of when we think they should come, we trust that he is faithful. I could have spent so many nights not frustrated, not angry, not tearing myself down mentally because I didn't think I was at the right path, because I didn't think I was receiving the accommodations or the accolations or the appreciation or the acknowledgement that I thought I deserved at a certain time. No. Guys, God calls us to be faithful and to trust that he will show up when he knows the time is right, and to trust that he will show up. to say, God, I will continue to follow you. Because what he was asking Abraham and Sarah to do was not just to trust that he would give them a child, but he was asking them to follow him, and that day would come. Don't worry about when, but it will come. And it may not come the way you expect it. It may not come how you thought they would be best, because God's ideas, God's plans are not always what we would think. And sometimes God might just have you want to wait a little bit longer, maybe even a year, kind of like me, to get where you feel like he has called you to go. So here's what I want to challenge you in small group today. I want you to be asking yourself, where in your life are you not placing trust in God and trying to cling to control, trying to cling to your own ability to make things happen? And it's okay to work hard for something. It's okay to be working towards something. But are you doing things you shouldn't be doing to get where you think you're supposed to be? Are you diminishing yourself? Are you diminishing your self-worth? Are you diminishing others? Are you losing integrity? Are you doing things that are manipulative? Are you cheating? Are you choosing to other methods that don't honor God to get where you think you need to be? And if you're doing those things, you're not placing trust in following God and doing what's right. So guys, what's one thing in your life, and there could be many, but at least one thing this week, talk about what's one thing in your life you need to be doing better at trusting in God. Because God asks us to wait so often. But a lot of times we view that waiting as a punishment, but more often than not, that waiting is a necessary time for us to grow, for us to become the people we need to be in order to do God's work best, in order to glorify him the most. I'm so grateful for the times I was forced to wait, because when I finally got to where I needed to be, when I finally became a pastor, when I finally got married, I stood there and recognized I was actually ready for it. I wasn't ready for it when I had originally planned, but I was ready for it when God had. And I think we need to understand that it's in the waiting that we truly prepare ourselves to do God's good work. So guys, how can you be trusting in God in your seasons of waiting? Stick around for announcements and enjoy small group. Well, hello guys, and welcome to Impact News. What?
Yeah.
So guys, we're not going to do any chit chat this week because we actually have 4 announcements for you, which is crazy. And we're going to try and crank all of them out really quick, so pay attention. So Chip, take it away. What's the first announcement we have this week?
The first one is our weekly Bible study. We're going to continue that series, but we're going on to 1st and 2nd Timothy. But everything else remains the same. Be there 7 o'clock in the lobby. Bring yourself, bring your Bible, and bring your attitude.
Yes. The next, guys, is next Sunday, April 18th, is our next Impact Lunch. It's going to be great. It's going to happen after Impact in person here in the Impact space. And so what we encourage is for you to bring a lunch to Impact, or to arrange for you to be able to go out and grab a lunch real quickly and come back so that we can eat food, play games, and hang out. Now, the next one, guys, I am super excited for, and this is not till the end of April, but it's something I want you to be aware of. We are going to be doing a Willow-wide student impact service. If you've ever gone to any of our camps, it's going to look like one of a camp service, and it's called Rally Night. You guys, it's going to be amazing. There's going to be incredible worship and teaching, and I'm going to have more information for you about what it's going to look like over the next coming weeks, but you can also find more information about it on our Instagram, which is WSL Impact. Guys, it's gonna be so cool. You're gonna wanna be at this. It's in the main auditorium at South Barrington. Now,
Sounds awesome.
I know it does, right? I'm so excited. Now the final one, Chip, take it away.
Back to me, we're doing a Willow-wide baptism. So that's gonna happen on May 2nd. If you're interested in getting baptized, let us know. You can always contact Ronnie at vbailey@willow.org. And hope you guys will raise your hand if you're interested. It's going to be wonderful.
Oh yeah, guys, baptism is not something you have to earn. It's not something you have to prove that you're ready for. Baptism is just a public declaration to say that you believe in Jesus and that you want a relationship with him. And if you want to make that public announcement, that public commitment, please email me. We will get you registered, or even if you just have questions, I'd love to talk to you about it. All right, guys, those were a lot of things. I hope you remember all of them, but that was the scoop at Impact News. I'm Ronnie.
And I'm Chip, signing off.
Woo woo! All right, guys, small group. Have a good one.